Has there been a movie yet that you watched while in quarantine that made you wish you just did nothing for the whole day instead? If not, this movie certainly challenges that idea for you. Coffee Kareem stars Ed Helms as James Coffee, a police officer who's in a new relationship with a woman named Vanessa, played by Taraji P. Henson. But her son Kareem, played by newcomer Terrence Little Gardenhigh, hates Coffee with a passion and attempts to hire a bunch of criminals to beat him up. And no, I'm not exaggerating there. However, he exposes a larger network of criminal activities that causes his family to become the target of a murder plot. And now Coffee and Kareem need to team up in order to save themselves and their loved ones. Saying that just makes me die a little bit inside, to be honest. You know, I do like Ed Helms. Do I think he's the funniest guy out there? No, not by a long shot. He was fine in The Office. Was Andy Bernard one of my favorite characters on that show? No, not really. And a lot of his movie characters tend to be variations of Andy Bernard, so I don't necessarily jump through hoops for this guy. But if you play to his strengths, he can be great, and I really didn't know anything about this movie going into it, other than that he was in it. There's not really a whole lot to watch right now that's new, to be honest. Most movies are delayed till later this year, and I saw this was one of Netflix's newest releases. And like I said, I like Ed Helms enough that I would give this a shot. But what is this movie? Who thought this was a good idea and decided to greenlight it? Let's just talk about it. So, good things. There were a small handful of moments that made me chuckle, I think mainly just because I was caught off guard, to be honest. The three main criminals in this movie bicker a lot and argue a lot and insult each other a lot, and every so often they get one or two good one-liners thrown in there. And the cast, I mean, some of them seemed like they were really trying, and they all seemed like they were having fun with it, so there's that, I guess. Probably the two that put in the most effort by far were Taraji P. Henson as Coffee's girlfriend and Betty Gilpin as one of the detectives in Coffee's unit. So that energy was good for what it was. But yeah, otherwise, this movie is terrible in every sense of the word. I mean, this story is totally insane, and not in a good way by any means. I mean, the main events of this movie are kicked off by one of the main protagonists hiring people to beat the living hell out of one of the other main protagonists. And by the way, that scene, when it happens, is so painfully unfunny for just how casually this kid talks about this thing happening. Like, he takes out a sock full of coins as payment, and I guess we're supposed to laugh at that because, haha, he's using coins in a sock to hire a bunch of violent murderers. But this kid has little to no remorse about this whole transaction, or really, in fact, anything he does. You know, let's talk about these characters for a second. In order for an audience to be invested in a movie, you at least need a good story. And if you somehow manage to screw that up, if the story's mediocre or even bad, at the very least, you need interesting characters. But this movie doesn't even remotely succeed at that, and I don't even think it was trying. Ed Helms is a total idiot in this movie, to be perfectly honest. Like, how his character even managed to put his clothes on in the morning is beyond me, let alone past the police academy. Think of every worst possible decision a character can make in the situations he's in, and he makes it. There was one really bad scene where Kareem tases his mom in order for her and him and Ed Helms to go all on the run together because she's not listening to them. And this genius, Ed Helms, his most rational decision is to just throw her in the trunk of his car and drive around with her unconscious body in the trunk. And at one point, he openly talks about the fact that there's a body in the trunk of his car with this kid, like casually in a public space. He does not think at all. Period. And when he's not making the most irrational decisions known to man, every other word out of his mouth is either a really bad sexual innuendo or he's debating someone over a topic that turns into one of the most cringe-worthy jokes. And I'm going to get to more of that in a second. I'd like to talk about Terrence Little Gardenhigh as Kareem. I have nothing against this actor. This is his first movie role, and he seemed like he was really getting into it, and that's great. I really hope at some point he'll be able to bring that same energy to another role that actually has some sort of substance. But this kid is without a doubt one of the most unlikable kids I've ever seen in a movie. Ever. Like, no exaggeration there. He's like watching a cross between the kid from Problem Child and the kid from The Good Son. Just like this demon spawn. Everything he says and does is just so mean-spirited. Like, he just goes out of his way to pick fights with everyone and everything around him. One of the first times we see him, he's getting into an argument with one of the kids at school. And then right after that, he gives one of the most offensive presentations possible in class, specifically just to piss everyone off. He has, like, one friend who helps him out in his little schemes, but they drop that character, like, halfway through the movie. So there goes, besides the mom, the only other character who actually even remotely cares about this kid. And of course they give a reason halfway through the movie, you know, the big heartfelt character moment, where it explains why he's as aggressive as he is. Which, honestly, it's not even really a heartfelt moment. It's just this kid proud of how obnoxious and how annoying he is. Like, this kid never once does something remotely likable. And to be perfectly honest, neither does Ed Helms. There's never one moment in this movie where I'm like, yeah, you know what? I can root for these two characters. And if you can't even have that, you are in for an awful experience. And that's exactly what this movie is. Last major issue I had with this movie, if that wasn't enough to tell you not to watch it, are the jokes. We essentially get every cheap shot and every recycled joke you can possibly think of. So I'm going to sound snobby for a second. I have nothing against humor that's considered lowbrow if it's done right. But here though, this movie doesn't even remotely attempt to make their jokes even sound clever. We get things like Ed Helms' seatbelt is stuck and he's falling out of his car as he's fumbling around trying to unbuckle it. Or at another point, he can't operate a microphone so he can send a message over the loudspeaker, and it just goes on painfully for a minute as he's fumbling his way through trying to send a message through the loudspeaker. But then if you put that aside, you get every other form of cheap jokes under the sun that just made me sit there in awe. We get jokes based on race, we get homophobic jokes, we get police brutality jokes, we get characters talking about their genitals, we get characters rambling on about going to the bathroom. There's even, get ready for this, an ongoing joke where Kareem goes around telling everyone that Coffee sexually assaulted him. Like, every character he meets, almost every character at least, he just drops it in there casually. And we're supposed to laugh at this? I mean, this movie is offensive on just every single level. It's just offensive for the sake of being offensive. Like, you ever cover your eyes when you watch a character on TV or in a movie just embarrass themselves because, like, you're just cringing at what they do? That was me for the majority of this movie. Look, speaking from experience, I know the hardest thing about any creative endeavor is to put something together and then put it out there for everyone to judge. So I really try not to be harsh when it comes to movies that I don't like. But I'm sorry, this movie is trash. And that might even be offensive to actual trash. It is lazy, it's offensive, everything and everyone in it is just unlikable. Like, this is just an awful movie. Coffee Kareem gets a 1 out of 10. I was gonna go with 0, but like I mentioned, there were a couple of times where this movie caught me off guard, and I got a chuckle here and there. And there seemed like there was some legitimate effort from the cast. But yet, I'm not calling these redeeming qualities by any means. I'm just saying it was enough to hold me back from giving it a 0. But let me know, did you see Coffee Kareem, or are you planning to see it? And I really hope you're not. And what were your thoughts? Did you find it funny at all by any chance? Did you enjoy the performances? And what's one of the best movies you've seen while in quarantine? Hopefully it's something better than this. Let me know in the comments below, and as always, if you like what you see, please make sure to hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll catch you next time.